10% of all the new cars sold in Iowa come from the Karl Auto Group. Our neighbors trust us to have the largest selection and the highest standards. To our current customers, thank you. And to our future customers, see for yourself why Karl drives Iowa.
Your dealer for life, it's the Karl way.
Keen Project Solutions, a modern engineering and construction firm, embracing technology, establishing industry-leading systems and processes, and delivering reliable results to our customers. At Keen, we are passionate about inspiring our team and our customers to achieve great things, offering the highest quality services in commercial construction to deliver turnkey projects. Our core beliefs drive us forward. Protect people, build relationships, drive innovation, and focus on end goals, bringing our customers' desired results to life. See how Keen can work for you at thinkdifferent.thinkkeen.com.
What is up? Welcome to Cyclone Fanatic Pregame here in the Northwest Bank Studios. Chris Williams has gotten too big time on us, man. He's an author now. He just hosted an event in front of probably 15 to 20 different Des Moines CEOs and said, nope, not doing pregame. Ask somebody else. So who else to ask other than Rob Gray? Rob, welcome.
Good to see you, Jake.
We're both not making the road trip out to Boulder. Chris will be out there, and he's not going to necessarily be covering the game for us in Boulder, but he's going to be in the stands, and I'm sure he's going to have a couple sodas and probably some good social media content. So follow along there. Rob and I will be back here. I'll be hosting the halftime and postgame show with Leah Nelson. It'll be fun.
Yeah, we'll be covering it from afar. You know, I call it the radio recap when I read it. So.
Yes. And who better to get a recap from than John Walters and Eric Heft?
Absolutely.
Our game day coverage is presented by a whole lot of people, a lot of great Iowa companies. We'll start with Karl Auto Group. It speaks for them. They speak for themselves. If you want to buy a car, buy a Chevy. You can always see C-Dub's massive truck from a county away. He got that from Karl Auto Group. Karl Auto, any of your local retailers here in the Des Moines Metro. The Iowa pork producers, you can team this sponsor up with Fairway and kill two birds with one stone. Head over to Fairway and buy your Iowa pork from there. I don't know about you, Rob, but I am getting ready for the Festival of Meats in a few short weeks, where I guess the rule is if they don't have a mother, you can't bring it. So there's no better place to shop for that than Fairway, and the same goes for game day. If you're at home, it's looking like it's going to be a beautiful day. Go grab some pork chops, a pork loin, some brats, and
smoke some pork shoulder.
Oh yeah, the pork shoulder. Have some people over, enjoy the game, and do all of your shopping at Fairway Meat and Grocery, and be sure to pick up your Iowa pork. I suppose we should probably start this game talking about another mobile quarterback. I was researching this and thinking off the top of my head, every single FBS quarterback that Iowa State has faced this year has some sort of mobile aspect to their game. They're different in the ways they do it. Mark Gronowski's the power runner. Caden Salter is different. He's probably going to be a little more similar to Jalen Rayner from Arkansas State. Rob, how do you feel like Iowa State has fared with these mobile quarterbacks this year, and what do you expect out of Salter on Saturday?
Not great, Jake. I think we can say that fairly safely.
100%.
Rayner ran all over the place. Sorsby was not quite as productive as I thought. He had the really nice TD run, well designed, well executed. But I think he did kind of what he wanted, other than missing some throws and on down the line, right? I mean, I think they did fine with Avery Johnson. That's obviously an outlier game being done in week 0 in Dublin. But Salter, it's a tough nut to crack, man, because he can be so good and then he can melt down like he did late in the first half in their last game where they build the 2-touchdown lead on TCU. He throws, all three of his picks or a couple of his picks really late in the half. TCU really gets back in it, eventually wins comfortably on paper, not so comfortably in real time. But the dude, I mean, he falls under that category of a dude that can make all the throws and a guy who can really, really extend plays. And oddly enough, it's kind of stunning when you think about how much Rocco's become involved in the run game. With 7 rushing touchdowns already this season. Salter has 5, and obviously it's different with Rocco. How many of those are 1-yard sneaks? And we saw a 14-yarder last week, but RPOs, those sorts of things. But it's going to be an issue. I mean, he's got a couple of really good big play receivers. They haven't been able to get the running game going much, but I think they've been without this Dallin Hayden, who was a former Ohio State transfer. They've leaned on Micah Welch, who is fine, but I think Hayden will add a different element. I think he's been banged up, and presuming that he's good, they could be better in that area, but they haven't been great up front. That's another thing. Salter's been running for his life a fair amount of time. So we'll see if Iowa State can dial up some pressure, which obviously it didn't do at all in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think everything you said points me in the direction of all the more reason to play your base defense, or as close to your base defense as you can. I know Matt Campbell said on Tuesday that they didn't switch anything up. I just, watching the film and what Caleb Bacon said after the game, I just don't think that's true. I think Iowa State did lean back to help the corners a little bit. I don't think you need to do this Saturday. I think the way Iowa State is able to have an effective day defensively is if you make Salter beat you with his arm. You mentioned it. They do have good receivers. They don't have as good of receivers as they had last year. I don't even think their receivers are at the level of Cincinnati's receivers we saw last week. They'll be able to make some plays. There's no doubt. I'm still sure Iowa State's newish corners will give up a big play or two, but I still don't see Salter. There's been nothing that I've seen this year where Salter is the guy that can consistently make plays with his arms. What you have to avoid is letting him dance around in the pocket, evade pressure, and have those. He's the type of quarterback that's capable for a 40-yard rush. He's the type of quarterback that is capable of that at any moment. It's not as much Mark Gronowski where you're always worried about him on 3rd and 4 with the quarterback power. He's a guy that will make plays in space, and you have to avoid letting him get into that space.
Yeah, and in terms of the not adjusting, I mean, I don't think anybody could deny that they adjusted in some ways. Maybe Coach Campbell was kind of splitting hairs there a little bit to be like, well, maybe we adjusted some things, but it wasn't necessarily in order to help the corners. But at any rate, I completely agree with you on that, Jake. And look, it's a bend but don't break, and usually doesn't bend all that much defense. I mean, traditionally under Coach Haycock, Iowa State's been elite in both total defense and scoring defense. It's still, last week notwithstanding, has been a really good scoring defensive team this season, and it'll be interesting to see if they can get back to that. And the base is playing the base defense is what leads to bend but don't break. Last week in the first half, or as Coach Campbell said, first quarter and a half, it was just a break defense. It was big play after big play for touchdown after touchdown, and they'd settled for one field goal. 5 straight scoring drives for Cincinnati, and then back to base defense. A lot better results for Iowa State in the second half. Well, they tried to claw back and ultimately couldn't in that game. But I'm looking at receiver. I'm looking at Omarion Miller, their leader. Can be a big play guy, obviously a trusted guy. Sincere Brown is the guy that really scares me in terms of his speed.
Yes.
So the corners will be tested. I really liked how Quentin Taylor talked about, his approach to the game and how he felt he played last week. And they went at him a lot. And, they had some success. But I don't think, most of Cincinnati's, almost all until that 82-yard touchdown when they completely suckered Iowa State to think run on 3rd and 8. I know it was ultimately really a decisive score. I don't think almost all of Cincinnati's plays were huge runs. So it'll be interesting to see again, how well the corners perform, big safeties game. But this is all about, Iowa State's front seven, I think, as you alluded to, Jake. And if you can get better play from Dom Orange, who's routinely great, a menace in there, and not everyone's going to have their A game all the time, and clearly a bit off at Cincinnati. But I think it's got to be a big linebackers game. I know Bacon's second on the team in tackles. I need more disruption. We need more disruption from those guys, more TFLs, and they can do that and really put pressure on Salter and that whole offensive unit. I think Iowa State can possibly win comfortably. I know the so-called smart money in Vegas saw 4.5 opening line in favor of Iowa State and hammered Colorado and brought it down to 2-ish last I looked. So we'll see. But I think it's hard for me to believe the Cyclones are going to be as fundamentally unsound as they were for almost half of the game in a second consecutive game.
I completely agree. You got to find a way to. You don't need 5 sacks. I think we're well past that point of that ever happening with this defense. But can you at least make them uncomfortable? Can you get 6 or 7 quarterback hurries? Can you get a few tackle for losses? If you can put them in a lot of 2nd and 10, 2nd and 12, 2nd and 8, it's going to make their offense a lot more challenging because, again, I don't think Salter is that guy who can pick apart your defense for an entire game. If you can consistently put him in tough situations, he will make mistakes. We'll flip over to the Iowa State offense against the Colorado defense, but first I'd love to give a shout out to our friends at Channel Seed. They are in the middle of yield season right now. It's the harvest, and this is one of my favorite times of the year. The sunsets during harvest season are just incredible from all the dust that comes up in the air. Our channel seedsmen across the state, across the Midwest, are what make the country go. So we want to thank Channel Seed for their support of what we do here at Cyclone Fanatic on game days. And we'd also love to give a shout out to Keen Project Solutions. They are growing always and hiring engineers and project managers for their Ankeny and Kansas City offices. So you've got Jack Trice Stadium drivable, and then you've got Hilton South drivable. You can join a team that values your dedication, fuels your career growth, and turn your expertise into impactful solutions. Visit thinkkeen.com today to apply. The Iowa State offense, statistically really good at Nippert Stadium last week. Execution, probably the worst had been since maybe the Arkansas State or Iowa game. Either way, it was among some of the worst execution that I think we've grown to accustom to seeing for this Iowa State offense. How do they match up, and how do they respond against this Colorado defense?
Yeah, I mean, I see it as a very favorable matchup for the run game to get going. I know, as Coach Campbell told us after the game, Carson Hansen was suffered a concussion. The Cincinnati game, the first injury report, he was questionable. When Campbell spoke to us, he was questionable. So we'll see how that trends as we get closer to game day. But I think Abu Sama last week took another step.
Yes.
And not just because he took a big hurdle, too. That guy, the explosiveness is still there. Now you're starting to see more elusiveness, and you're also starting to see more power, dragging guys, running guys over. I think he can be a guy they lean on for 20-plus carries. And I think you'll see Dylan Lee, like he did, I think, a series maybe in Cincinnati after Hansen had gone out with the concussion late in the first half, I believe. So,
yeah, it was pretty much the last play of the half.
Yeah. So, again, Colorado's giving. I looked it up. They might be second to last in the Big 12 in rushing yards allowed. Iowa State's been climbing that list, only 10th, I think, but certainly rushing for a lot more yards on average than they did last season, maybe the last couple. So I think this has a chance to be a game where, I wrote about it in one analysis piece that ball control and ball security always wins games, but it's imperative for Iowa State to be good in both those areas in this one, where, again, Colorado's been in about every game against, a top 20 BYU team. Probably felt like they could have gotten that one. Georgia Tech, a top 20, top 15 team. So they're just good enough to beat you if you don't bring your A game. So it also falls under Coach Campbell's if you don't bring, and yeah, it's a cliche, but yes, it's true. Iowa State's gotten away with a couple of wins without across-the-board A games so far this season. I think they'll need to be near that on Saturday because Colorado's really hungry. They feel like they are better than the record indicates. I think watching them on video bears that out. They've just have found ways to lose. And as we see, that can shift in a hurry. And Iowa State just needs to, again, as Coach Campbell said, they weren't very good in all three phases. And in an ironic sense, he said that was kind of a good thing because it does break it all down, get back to the fundamentals. And I expect Iowa State to come out much better in all three phases, which is why I'm fairly confident, even though Las Vegas sure seemed to think otherwise, that Iowa State can pull this one out.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. The messaging from the staff since the early summer, was talking about how mature this team is and how much of a step Rocco Becht has taken up, not just with his arm and his accuracy, but his leadership. And I buy that because we've seen it up to this point. And yes, the team came up short last week. They played probably their worst game of the season, but this is a program that's built on responding to adversity. Is this the game where we see that? Is that proven? If you want to achieve the goals that have been set out, it's necessary. This is the week to respond to adversity and to go play that A game, go play that A- game. And I feel like this is a spot that's typically good for Iowa State, but as I came across the other day, the last 3 years after Iowa State loses their first game of the season, they've responded with a loss on the road the following week. So they haven't responded in this case the last 3 years. I think this team is a little bit different, though, than the circumstances of those other teams. I expect Rocco Becht to play his best game of the year.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's kind of counterintuitive. Both Rocco after the Cincinnati game and Caleb Bacon and talking to the media on Tuesday talked about how it can be a good thing if the team responds the way you described, Jake, to get a loss a little bit earlier. Last season it was 7-0, and then you get
Drop
the draining
twos,
thing,
yeah.
and then it was at Kansas for the second one, right?
Yes.
And so a tough, close home loss turned into that, I guess, which was very much like Cincinnati. So maybe this is just going to be a tough road, but however you want to put it. I think they are better equipped from a leadership, mental standpoint. Great leaders on that team last year too, go and win 11 games, but just deeper throughout the program. I think it's not necessarily just the guys fronting as the leadership group. It's a much larger group, I feel like. Now it's going to come down to what Campbell has questioned and challenged his team with ever since he started talking to us prior to this season, which is toughness. Toughness gets you back to doing the work that Campbell described and getting a lot better than you were last week. Toughness ensures that, like it has for Iowa State in its wins, when you need to make a play, someone does it, or a group does it. And that's just what it's going to boil down to in this one. I mean, I don't see any way, unless Colorado turns it over like crazy, and they're one of the worst turnover margin teams in the Big 12, but it's not by a wide margin. It's like half a game. They just haven't forced many. I think it might be 8 giveaways to 5 takeaways, something like that. But barring them turning it over four times again, I think this is going to be a fight to the end. And that's where that toughness that Campbell has exhorted his team to exhibit, and it has at times, needs to show up.
Yeah, I'm looking at the tight ends on. There's going to be third downs. There's going to be fourth downs. Without Kyle Conradi, there's going to be pivotal plays in this moment. And there wasn't really anyone who consistently made that play last week. I know Rocco, he has a couple throws he'd like to have back in that case. There's a couple drops. It was good coverage, but a couple plays that have been made this season. I'm looking at the tight ends for a bounce back game as well. Other defenses have found ways to match up with the tight ends and make things different. Now it's time for Iowa State's, maybe their best position group. Maybe it's time for them to to counter back and see if they can have a big game in the red zone.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to see how teams have schemed it to take that away, and that was kind of expected that to happen, right? With his multi-talented as Ben Bramer, Gabe Burkle, we've seen Tyler Moore show it. As multi-talented as they are, teams are going to see them as a primary weapon, especially when the receivers outside of some big plays by Eskelson and Overby had a couple early on, hadn't emerged. Now that Chase Sowell, now that Xavier Townsend are making big play after big play, I think it might go back to trying to see if they can shut those guys down, and that'll open up more opportunities although Bramer had a number of opportunities, got the 2-point catch. In Burkle, I know he's been banged up, so who knows how close to 100% he is. But they'll have more opportunities to make plays, I think, because the way Sowell has popped in particular the last 2 weeks, Townsend had the great fourth down catch. He's been really good for some chunk plays in the last few games or since the first game or two of the season. So I don't think they'll be able to hold them back, though. I really think when you throw in the deep threat that Eskelson has provided, those guys both can provide that too. So I think it's going to be really hard for Colorado's defense to come up with a winning scheme. All that said, Iowa State doesn't turn the ball over much either. And if that happens, all bets are off. But I just think with those guys emerging at receiver, Rocco's going to have a lot of weapons. And I concur with you that he's going to have one of his best, if not best, games of the season.
All right, Rob, well, you've given your explanation for an Iowa State win. What's your score prediction?
Oh, what do I have it? I got him by a field goal. So Chase Smith's going to have to make a big one at some point. But, I just feel like it is a pick'em game. I think it probably right to sit in that spot. Colorado's been in every game. Yes, they lost by, 14 last week. But yeah, they were in that game the whole way and leading it, of course, a good chunk of it. Not easy to play at Folsom Field. But I think a lot of Iowa State fans will be there, so it'll feel a little bit like home in a mini home in moments when they're doing well, and hopefully they can build off that. But I don't see any way outside of a bunch of turnovers on one side or the other, this being a 2-score game.
I went Iowa State 31, Colorado 20, but I'm kind of the sentiment. I'm of the sentiment though that I think this game is close into the third and fourth quarter, and Iowa State might just be able to pull away late. But I don't see this at all being a game where Iowa State gets up 20-3 and then they kind of just sleepwalk till the end and walk out with a 2-score victory. I think this is a nervous game in the third quarter, and Rocco's able to make plays down the stretch. So we'll be here in the Northwest Bank Studios all day with your halftime show, your post-game show. I'll be joined by Leah Nelson. Rob, thanks for filling in on the pregame show. And thanks to all of our great sponsors, Fairway Meat and Grocery, Iowa Pork Producers, Channel Seed, Keen Project Solutions, Karl Auto Group. You guys are the best. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you at halftime.